Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. Now today's video is a very special one as I have some scary Hmong haunted duplex stories to share with you all. I used to live in a duplex too when I was a kid, so I'll share my experiences at the end of the video. Thank you to the viewers who submitted these stories. And before we get started, consider becoming a YouTube member where you get extra bonus content as well as member-only features. Click that join button next to my channel to become a member. Remember to leave a like and subscribe, and without further ado, enjoy the show. This happened around the time when my wife and I first moved into a duplex with our daughter Rachel. At the time, Rachel was just about 6 years old. My wife and I were still young parents, and we were trying to save money little by little. We wanted a house eventually, but anyone who lives in Minnesota knows how expensive the nice houses are. Even back then, it felt like every time we saved up a little bit, something else came up. When we found that duplex, we were actually very happy. It wasn't a fancy place, but it was clean, affordable, and in a safe neighborhood. It was one of those older Minneapolis duplexes where the units sit side by side. Each side had its own front door and a back door. There was a white elderly couple who owned the duplex that lived on the other side. They were probably in their late 70s or early 80s. They were a nice couple. The husband liked to sit outside when the weather was nice, and the wife was friendly but quiet. When we first met them, they told us that they preferred renting to a small family because they didn't want loud college kids or people throwing parties. That was fine with us. We weren't party people, and we just wanted a stable place where Rachel could have her own room. Our side of the duplex had a small living room in the front, then a narrow hallway that led to the bedrooms and bathroom. The kitchen was toward the back. Rachel's room was the smaller bedroom, and our room was right across from hers. Because the hallway was short, we could hear her if she talked loudly, cried, or got up in the middle of the night. For the first month or so, everything felt normal. We unpacked, bought secondhand furniture, hung up a few family pictures, and slowly made the place feel like ours. Rachel loved her room because before that, she had always slept in the same room as us or near us. She liked having her own little space. She had a small bed, a toy box, a plastic table where she colored, and those little stuffed animals that somehow multiply when you have a child. The first thing I noticed was that Rachel talked to herself a lot more after we moved in. At first, I didn't think much of it. Kids talk when they play. Sometimes she would line up her stuffed animals and pretend that she was teaching them. Sometimes she would talk to her dolls like they were her students or patients or babies. There was nothing strange about that. My wife said that she used to do the same when she was little. But after a while, it started sounding a lot less like Rachel was making up both sides of the conversation and more like she was answering someone. I would be in the living room watching TV after work, and I would hear Rachel in her room saying things like, "No, that's mine," or "My mom said that I can't." And then she would pause, like she was listening. Then she would laugh and say, "Okay, but only one time." Again, that can be normal. I understand that. I didn't want to be the kind of parent who turned every kid thing into something scary. But I grew up hearing stories from my parents and grandparents and watched enough scary movies. One evening, while my wife was folding laundry in our bedroom, Rachel was sitting on the floor in her room. I heard her giggling. Then I heard her say, "You have to hide better. My dad can hear you." I walked to her doorway and looked inside. She was sitting alone by her toy box. I asked, "Rachel, who are you talking to?" She looked at me like I was bothering her game and said, "My friend." I said, "What friend?" She said, "Anna." I looked around the room, even though, obviously, there was no one there. I smiled because I didn't want to scare her. I said, "Oh, Anna is here?" Rachel nodded and went back to playing. When I told my wife later that night, she laughed a little and said that it was probably an imaginary friend. I agreed with her out loud, but inside I felt uneasy. For the next few weeks, Rachel kept mentioning Anna. It was never anything dramatic. She would say that Anna liked her toys, Anna didn't like it when the hallway light was too bright, Anna wanted to play house, that she was shy around grown-ups. Every time we would ask about this Anna, Rachel answered like Anna was a normal child. The thing that made my wife nervous happened after one time when they went grocery shopping together. It was sometime in the summer, and my wife had taken Rachel to get groceries while I was at work. On the drive back, Rachel was sitting in the back seat eating some crackers. Out of nowhere, she said, "Mom, Anna used to live in our house." My wife looked at her in the mirror and asked, "What are you talking about? Who's Anna?" Rachel said, "She lived in my room with her mommy and daddy and brother." My wife tried to keep her voice normal. She asked, "How do you know that?" And Rachel replied, "Oh, because Anna told me." Then Rachel said that Anna got really sick and that she couldn't go outside anymore. But then one day, Anna got better. My wife told me later that the way Rachel said it was not scary or sad. It was like she was telling her about something that happened at school. My wife didn't ask too many questions because she didn't want to put ideas into our little daughter's head, so she just said, "Oh," and kept driving. But when she came home, I could tell that something was wrong because she was quiet while putting groceries away. That night after Rachel slept, she told me everything about what happened. I said that maybe she saw something on TV, and my wife said that she doesn't watch anything like that. I told her that maybe another kid at school had said something, and my wife said that she said it very seriously, like Rachel already knew. After that, we started to pay closer attention. We didn't want to make a big deal in front of Rachel, but whenever she talked about Anna, one of us would listen from the hallway or ask small questions later. However, the first time I heard the other voice, I still get chills thinking about it. It was a weeknight. My wife and I were in the kitchen cooking. I remember because we were making dinner together. Rachel was in her room with her door mostly closed. We could hear her talking. Nothing new. Then my wife stopped cutting vegetables and looked toward the hallway. I asked, "What are you doing? Hurry up and cut those vegetables." She then whispered, "Listen." At first, I only heard Rachel. Then, I heard it. A second voice. It was soft, and I couldn't understand the words clearly, but it sounded a lot like a young girl. It wasn't Rachel changing her voice. I know my daughter's voice. This voice was thinner and quieter, like it was coming from inside the room, but also very quiet. Rachel said something, then the other voice answered, and Rachel would laugh. My wife turned pale. I put down whatever I was holding and slowly walked toward the hallway. My wife followed behind me. We didn't stomp or run. We walked carefully, because in that moment, the both of us were thinking the same thing. If someone was somehow in our daughter's room, we needed to know. We got to the door, and it was almost closed, with just a small crack. From outside, we heard Rachel say, "No, my dad doesn't like it when I do that." Then the other voice said something back. Again, I couldn't understand what it said, but I heard it clearly enough to know that someone answered. My heart started beating fast. I looked at my wife, and she was covering her mouth. I pushed the door open quickly. The voice stopped. Rachel was sitting on the floor with her dolls. She looked up at us, annoyed, and said, "What do you want?" I looked everywhere, under the bed, by the closet, behind the door, and there was nobody. I asked, "Who were you talking to?" Rachel sighed, like she was tired of answering the same question. She said, "Anna." My wife asked, "Where is Anna now?" Rachel looked at the corner near the closet and said, "She doesn't like you guys coming in. She's shy." That was the first time I felt real fear in that house. Before that, I could explain everything away. A kid with an imagination, old house noises, maybe things through the walls. But hearing that voice from behind Rachel's door was different. My wife heard it too, and it wasn't just me. I didn't yell at Rachel. I didn't scold her. I also did not want to scare her by saying that there was a ghost in her room, so I forced myself to sound normal and said, "Oh, you know what? I think we would have a lot of fun if we went to Grandma's house." Rachel's face changed right away. She loved my mom. She jumped up and started asking if Grandma was cooking, and I said yes, even though I honestly didn't have an idea. I just needed her out of that room. We grabbed a few things and left. On the way to my parents' house, my wife was quiet. Rachel was happy in the back seat, talking about what snacks Grandma might have. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, not at Rachel, but at the empty seat next to her. I kept feeling like something had followed us out to the car. When we got to my parents' house, my mom took Rachel to the kitchen and gave her food. My wife and I pulled my dad aside and told him what had been happening. I expected him to say that maybe we were tired or imagining things. Instead, he listened quietly the whole time. My dad then said that it must have been a spirit of somebody that had died there in that house, and that spirit was what attached itself to our daughter Rachel. He told us not to worry, and that in the next couple of days he would reach out to a shaman to ask for help. I asked if we could stay at my parents' house that night, and my dad thought for a moment and said that we could. He just told us to not let Rachel be alone by herself all the time, and to not let Rachel play alone in her room too long, and not talk directly to the spirit, to try to distract her. For the next few days, the house felt different. Maybe it had always been like that, and we were only noticing it now. But I swear that the air in the hallway outside of Rachel's room felt colder. At night, after Rachel fell asleep, my wife and I would sit in the living room and listen. Sometimes we heard small footsteps running down the hallway. They were light, like a child running barefoot. The first time it happened, I jumped up and checked Rachel's room. She was under her blanket asleep. I thought that it was her, so I checked, but she was asleep. I checked the front door, the back door, all the windows, and nothing. Another night, I heard Rachel's door close by itself. It wasn't a slam. It was just a soft click, like someone pulled it shut. I got up and opened it. Rachel was asleep. The window was closed, no fan was blowing, and I stood there for maybe a minute, just looking into the dark room. Then I felt like something was watching me from the corner of the closet. My wife also started hearing things when I was at work. She said that once, while Rachel was at school, she heard a child laughing in Rachel's room. This kind of freaked her out because she was the only one home alone, and she knew that Rachel was at school. She decided to go and check it out and went to the doorway, and when she got there, the laughing stopped. She said that she didn't go inside. She just walked back and got in her car and went shopping the rest of the day until I got home. A couple of weeks later, it was the time when the shaman came to our house. The two of us were both exhausted. Before the ceremony, we told the elderly couple next door that a family elder was coming to do a spiritual ceremony, and they agreed. They were okay with it. We didn't explain everything in detail. We just said it was part of our tradition and our culture, and asked if it would bother them, and they said it was fine. The shaman set up his altar and performed his ceremony. The shaman chanted and started to burn some joss paper, and it sounded like he was speaking in a way that it was as if he was addressing someone that we couldn't see. Afterward, he tied a red string around Rachel's wrist. He told us not to remove it until it fell off by itself. He didn't really explain much about whatever it was or who the spirit was, but we could only assume that it was Anna or whatever my daughter's imaginary friend was. After that, my daughter became normal again, and she didn't talk about or mention her friend named Anna. My wife and I didn't talk about it either. It was as if it never happened. A couple of weeks later, my wife decided to talk to the elderly couple next door. She made some egg rolls and brought them over as a thank you. I didn't go with her because I was at work, but she told me everything later. She said that the couple invited her in, and they were polite as always. After a little small talk, my wife asked if they knew anything about the family who used to live on our side of the duplex. The old couple looked at each other. The wife said that there had been a family of 4 that lived there a few years ago. A mother, a father, a son, and a little daughter. They moved out long before we moved in. My wife asked if anything had happened to them, but the couple said that they didn't know too much. They were private people, and the family didn't talk to them that often. Then, my wife asked if they had ever heard anything strange when our side was vacant. The old man did not answer right away. The old woman finally said that sometimes when there was no one living there, they heard what sounded like a little girl talking on the other side of the wall. They thought that maybe it was a TV left on or noises from outside, but they knew that the unit was empty, and sometimes they heard running in the hallway too. They never told us because they didn't want us to be scared. Well, obviously they also wanted your rent money as well. When my wife told me that, I got chills all over again. It confirmed that what we experienced was not only because of Rachel's imagination. Something had been there before us. We still live in this duplex today, and we're still saving money for a house. Like usual, houses are expensive, and as long as nothing else is happening, we are okay staying here. Rachel's older now, and she doesn't seem to remember Anna at all. But sometimes when she still plays with her toys, when she's not on her iPad, I will hear her talk softly. Most of the time it's just normal kid stuff, and she'll make voices for her dolls or pretend that she's a teacher. But once in a while I get afraid that what if Anna came back? But anyways, yeah, that was what happened in our duplex. Hey guys, quick message before the next story. As you know, due to everyone's undying support, our channel has seen tremendous growth in the past few months in comparison to the years since this channel has been created. As our community grows closer to 10,000 subscribers, I'm hoping to work with potential sponsors to help this channel grow even faster. This will give me the chance to try out different video formats and ideas, as I hope to one day talk in front of a camera instead of being a faceless voice. So, if all things go well, you might get a face reveal from me in the near future. If you're interested or know anyone interested in partnering up with this channel, reach out to my email listed in the description below. Thank you so much to everyone for supporting this channel, and here's the next story. I grew up in a duplex in St. Paul, Minnesota, and for a long time I didn't think that house was haunted. It might sound strange because I'm about to tell you some things that happened there, but when you're living in a place every day, you get used to it a lot. If something only happens once in a while, you don't always panic. You just tell yourself that it was the house or the neighbors or your imagination, and then you just keep going. My parents rented that duplex when I was in high school. It was me, my parents, my older brother, and my younger sister. We were just a family trying to get by. My dad worked a lot and my mom cooked and took care of everyone. My brother was either playing video games or going out with his friends, and I was the one who cared too much about my school. My younger sister was still little and she shared a room with me. We lived on one side and another Hmong family lived on the other side. They weren't related to us, but they were nice and we just kept to ourselves. We could hear them sometimes through the walls, especially late at night, and because of that, the first strange things were easy to explain. At night, we would hear footsteps going up and down the stairs. Sometimes it sounded like someone was walking from the front door up to the bedrooms. Other times it sounded like someone was coming down from upstairs and stopping near the living room. The first few times, my mom said that it was just probably the neighbors. Their side of the duplex had a staircase close to ours, so maybe the sound carried. That explanation made sense, so nobody thought too hard about it. Sometimes the doors would open or close by themselves. Not wide open or slamming every night, just little things. A bedroom door that we thought was shut would be open later. The bathroom door would click by itself. One time, the basement door opened a few inches while we were eating dinner, and my dad got up to close it. But there was this thing with my younger sister that was harder to explain. During this time, my younger sister would sleepwalk at night. She would get out of bed and stand in weird places. Sometimes I woke up and found her by the closet. Sometimes she would be by the bedroom door, just facing the hallway, and whenever I asked her what she was doing, she usually didn't answer. Her eyes would be open, but she didn't look like she was awake. At first I thought it was a little creepy, but not supernatural. Kids and people sleepwalk all the time. I looked it up once on the school computer and told myself that it was normal. My mom said that my sister would eventually grow out of it. One night I woke up because I felt like someone was standing close to me. Our room was dark, but the streetlight came through the blinds enough for me to see shapes, and my sister was standing at the foot of my bed. I said her name. She didn't answer. I asked, "What are you doing?" She just stood there staring at me. I couldn't see her eyes clearly, but I knew that her face was pointed right at me. Something about that made my skin feel cold. It wasn't like she was trying to scare me, but it just felt very creepy. I told her to go back to sleep, and nothing happened. I grabbed the pillow next to me and tossed it at her. It hit her lightly and fell to the floor, and she didn't move. And that's when I got really scared. I grabbed another pillow, and this time I threw it harder. It hit her right in the chest, and she blinked, like she finally woke up, and then she looked confused and asked why she was standing there. I told her that she was sleepwalking again, and I took her back to bed. I didn't really sleep much after that. When I told my parents the next morning, my mom became worried. My dad played it off like nothing was wrong, but my parents went out to buy a copper bracelet. You know, the one with the two snake heads? They got one of those and placed it on my sister, placed it right on her wrist. After that, the sleepwalking seemed to stop. Another thing happened when I was studying, and I remember exactly that I was studying for AP Calculus. I remember that detail because I absolutely hated that class. I was sitting at my desk getting mad over a problem that I couldn't solve, and it was probably around 8 or 9 o'clock at night. My family was in the living room watching a movie, and I was in the bedroom with the door mostly closed so I could focus. While I was working, I heard someone call my name. It sounded like my mom, but quieter. I answered, "Yeah?" Nobody replied. I waited for a few seconds and then went back to the problem. A few minutes later, I heard it again. This time, it sounded closer to the door. I got annoyed because I thought my family was messing with me. I opened the door and walked to the living room. Everyone was sitting there watching the movie. My mom was on the couch, my dad was in his chair, my brother was laying on the floor, and my sister was leaning up against my mom. I said, "Who called me?" They all looked at me. My mom said, "Nobody called you." I asked again because I thought that they were joking, and my brother said, "We didn't call you. Go and study." I went back to the bedroom, but I couldn't focus anymore. The more I thought about the voice, the more it bothered me. It sounded like someone in the house, not outside, not from the TV, and they said my name. It was clear enough for me to answer. I sat there, staring at my notebook, and I slowly got goosebumps on my arms. I closed the bedroom door all the way after that. The scariest story from the duplex, though, didn't happen to me. It happened to my older brother. He told us years later, but I could tell by the way that he told it that it still bothered him. Back then, we had a PlayStation 3 in the living room. My brother loved playing late at night after everyone slept. My dad didn't like it because he thought my brother would ruin his eyes or be tired for school and couldn't study. So my brother would sneak and play it quietly. One night, he was in the living room playing after midnight. The TV volume was low, and everyone else was asleep. He said that the house was dark, except for the TV and a little bit of light from outside coming through the windows. While he was playing, he heard a door open in the hallway. He thought it was my dad, so he panicked, turned off the TV, unplugged the PlayStation, and hid behind the sofa like that was somehow going to save him. That part is funny now, but he said that at that time, he was scared of getting caught and getting a whooping from my dad. He crouched behind the sofa and waited for my dad to walk into the living room. But nobody came. Instead, he heard footsteps near the stairs. At first, he thought that maybe my dad was going down to the basement, but then he saw something move. He said that it was tall, taller than our dad. Our dad stood at around 5'4", 5'5", but this thing stood at least 6 feet tall. It looked like a shadow, but darker than the rest of the house. It came down the stairs slowly, one step at a time. He couldn't see a face or clothes, just a long black shape. It didn't turn toward the living room. It moved down the last steps and went straight toward the basement door. My brother stayed behind the sofa, barely breathing. He said that the thing phased through the basement door, and he could hear what sounded like the stairs creaking as it descended into the basement. And then, nothing. He waited for what felt like a long time, and then he decided that he had one chance. He ran from behind the sofa, through the living room, and up the stairs to our bedroom area. He said he tried to run quietly, but he was so scared that his whole body felt weird and heavy. The way he explained it to us was pretty funny. He said that his butt was tingling all the way up the stairs. That part made everyone laugh when he told us about it, but he was serious. He said he was terrified that the thing from the basement would hear him and come up behind him. He said that he was afraid that it would come up and grab his legs and pull him with it down into the basement. He got to his room, shut the door quietly, and stayed under his blanket until morning. Eventually, my parents saved enough money and we bought a house. By that time, I had already gotten married and moved out to live with my husband, so I didn't move with them from the duplex. But when they told me that they were leaving, I felt relieved for them. I went back one last time to help them pack some things. The duplex looked smaller than I remembered. The hallway, the stairs, the living room, and everything felt ordinary in daylight. I remember standing near the basement door while my dad carried boxes outside. Looking back at it now, I'm surprised that we managed to stay in that haunted duplex. I mean, it was pretty normal at that point to have all these weird experiences, and there was nothing that was malicious or evil against us. It just seemed like whatever was there was a spirit that was just living there as well. It didn't haunt us or do anything bad to us, so we just kind of left it alone, and it also did its best to leave us alone as well, I think. My parents never called a shaman to come and take a look at the duplex. My parents didn't always get along with each other, and there would be times when my mom would want to get a shaman to come and take a look at it, but my dad would always just play it off and said that he didn't believe in those things, and it was just superstition. One more thing that I want to tell you about was something that didn't happen to me, but instead my cousin. She came to visit us one time, and she was hanging out with me in our room. We had a sleepover with just the two of us. We were talking about boys and talking about school, and she went up to go and use the bathroom. She got out into the hallway and went to the bathroom. She said that she was washing her hands in the sink and her eyes were looking down because she was washing her hands. She could see in the corner of her eye a dark shadow walk behind her outside through the door. She looked up and was confused. At first, she didn't register it, and she just washed her hands and wiped it on a towel and came back to my bedroom. My bedroom wasn't that far from the bathroom, so I could hear when she was coming back. The two of us just continued our sleepover and just hung out in my room until we fell asleep. She didn't tell me this until we had all grown up, and she brought it up at a family gathering. We were just hanging out, and she asked if I remember living in that duplex, and that's when she told me about her experience. Sometimes I still have dreams about that duplex. I have dreams about walking through it, and I still remember how everything looked before we moved out. The scariest place in that duplex has to be the basement. Thankfully, none of us experienced anything in the basement, and we didn't really go down there, but all I know is that it was unfinished and it had a bunch of junk and old storage stuff downstairs. Sometimes I scare myself by thinking about what if there was something that lived in the basement there, or what if there was a ghost or that tall shadow living down there waiting for us to go down. I think that's why to this day I'm still afraid of those basements. Like every time I go down one, I get this weird tingling sensation, like there's something down there. But I know that this is all just my imagination, so I try not to think too much about it. One last thing that I want to share with you that I remember while I was typing this up. My siblings and I, as well as some cousins and the kids from next door, were playing tag outside. We were sharing the backyard and the front yard, so all of us kids were running around crazy outside trying to tag each other. Me and my sister's bedroom had a window that faced the backyard. I can't remember who was it, but I remember that I ran toward the backyard while most of the kids were in the front yard. I was trying to be sneaky and was walking quietly up against the wall of the house. I walked past the bedroom window, trying to get to the corner on the other side. When I swear, I thought there was someone standing right behind the window. I walked back and looked, and it was gone. There was nobody there. Honestly, I don't remember how it looked, but I think it was a woman with long brown hair. By then, I could hear the sound of laughing and giggling coming from the front yard, so I knew that whoever was it was going to chase somebody down the alley next to the house. So I turned around and ran back, and the kids just continued playing tag. I thought that it was one of the aunties or one of the adults in the house, but nobody had brown hair. At that point, I didn't think too much about it, so I just kept it to myself and went on with my day. But yeah, that was my experience when we lived in that haunted duplex at my old place. If I think of any more stories or any more experiences, I'll make sure to send it to you. Back then, when I was a young boy, free from stress and bills in my life, I lived in these duplexes that were called boxcar duplexes. And the reason why they called them like that is because they literally look like boxcars stacked on top of each other. We lived side by side with my uncle and his kids and my cousins, and I lived with my parents and my grandparents. So it was a very good time. Even now I look back on it and it was nostalgic. I don't know what I was doing at 3 or 4 years old, playing around in the mud and not investing in houses or buying houses on the market. If I did that, I'd be rich by now. But during that time, it was a wonderful time. This was during the early 2000s, and our house, our duplex there, it wasn't scary, I guess you could say. It wasn't like you walked in and it was like, whoa, it's scary. But it's also had a few shares of strange experiences. There was a time period where one of my uncles and auntie were also living with us on our side of the duplex. We had a spare room, so they stayed there. And there was one day where my auntie came home from getting groceries, or maybe she got home from work, and she walked through the front door. And when you enter the front door, you walk into this tiny little hallway. You're kind of met with the wall right in front of you immediately, and that leads to the kitchen as well as to the living room. So my auntie walks in, and she's starting to set her stuff on a table, and she notices that from the corner of her eye as she walked in, there's a man sitting in the living room. She thought that maybe it was my uncle or my dad or one of the men in the family sitting in the living room watching TV or something. So she set down her stuff and walked into the living room to check out who it was. And lo and behold, nobody was there. It was empty. But she swore that when she entered into the house, she could see from the corner of her eye a man sitting on the sofa. Now, another thing that was weird about that duplex were the footsteps that would go up and down the stairs. Now, our stairs weren't those stairs that kind of like went directly up, but it was kind of, I don't know how to explain it. It was like those stairs that you go up and there's like a little platform and then you turn and then you go up again. It's kind of like that, basically. And my mom would tell me about how she would sometimes hear footsteps going up and down the stairs. My mom also said that it was just probably our cousins or our uncle living next door because the stairs were pretty built in the same vicinity of each other on the opposite end of the duplex. You know how duplexes, they're just kind of like mirror images of each other sometimes. But that's what she said, is that sometimes she would hear footsteps and it must have just been my uncle or my cousins walking up and down. Let's just say that it was just them. But that's another kind of weird or strange experience at that house that could be drawn up to just the neighbors next door. I've also explained this story in one of my previous videos. It was my comeback video from a couple months ago that I explained why I stopped telling stories for a long time before getting back into telling scary stories again. But there was this one day where most of the adults, actually all the adults except for my mom, they all went to a important funeral, I guess you could say. So people next door, my cousins and uncles and everybody next door, they all left to go to the funeral. And it was just me and my mom and my grandma and grandpa, and my dad and uncle and everybody. They all left to go to the funeral. So literally it was just me and my mom in that lonely duplex, the two of us, nobody on the other side. And we were in the bedroom. I forgot what we were doing. We were just probably playing around or something. And the door was closed to the bedroom, and my mom, out of nowhere, she could hear a couple of knocks on the bedroom door. So she kind of looks up and is looking at the bedroom door, wondering what that was. And this is when I was little, so I didn't really remember this part. This was a gap that my mom told me about. But she said that I also looked up and asked her if she heard it as well. And that's when my mom was a little confused and scared, because she knew that nobody was home, and if there was somebody home, they would have told her. So she got up and opened the bedroom door, and sure enough, it was empty. Now, one thing that also made the house kind of scary, the duplex kind of scary, is that the upstairs hallway is very long. Like I said, we lived in these boxcar duplexes, and because they're like these long rectangular buildings, the hallway upstairs the hallway upstairs was this super long hallway, and it's got that old style with wood paneling walls, and it had this kind of green fuzzy carpet, and there's no windows in that hallway, so it's like pitch black, and all the doors are shut except for ours because my mom opened it and realized that nobody was there. So she was kind of scared, and she closed the door, and sure enough, she decides to call one of my aunties to come and pick us up so we could get out of the house. And that whole day, the three of us went out shopping and went out around town and probably went to the mall and all that stuff. And it was a lot of fun. And when my dad and my grandma and grandpa came home, my mom told my dad and my grandparents about it. And they said that it was probably nothing and just kind of brushed it off and that it'll be okay. Now that duplex is, it holds a lot of memories in my heart. I don't remember a lot of bad things or scary things. I just remember a lot of the good things. The basement itself, though, was a little bit, I guess you could say, it was a little bit more scary. It's like one of those unfinished basements, and it's a very long basement. And there's like just one or two windows down there. But I just remember going down there one time because this was during a time when Toy Story was a very popular hit, and I had this toy a toy of Woody, and that's when the toys were really good. You could take off the hat, you can, pull the string, and he would speak and stuff like that. And right at the bottom of his boot, it wrote Andy, but I didn't want the name to be on there. I wanted it to be my own name, so I went downstairs. I think I went by myself, because they had this big sink in the basement. It was like one of those big tub sinks. So I turned it on and I was trying to scrub it off the name Andy so I could write my own name on there. But yeah, those were the days when gas was cheap, houses were affordable, and I was just playing outside, eating dandelions, not investing in houses or the stock market. And that's why I'm broke and I'm making YouTube videos just so I can support myself. But hey, if you want to help support the channel and make it grow, consider becoming a YouTube member by clicking that join button next to my channel. And like always, remember to leave a like and subscribe. We're almost to 10,000 subscribers. I can't believe it. We're so close. I also have a video on screen right now too, so if you're interested, click on that one. You might enjoy it. And like always, I will see you all in the next one.